Shalom Mishpacha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, so that means it's time for another Friday Reads video. And I have only finished one book this week, so I don't think this is going to be a super long Friday Reads. But I finished this today. This was While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams, which was so kindly gifted to me by the lovely Sandy at Ms. Reads a Lot. So thank you so much again for sending this to me, Sandy. So I ended up giving this book 3.25 stars. And I think, like Sandy and Gina of Gina Stand Your Books, when they both read this, I shared, I think, some similar criticisms of it that they voiced. So this is a political thriller. So it centers around the mid-20-something Avery Keene, who is a law clerk for a Supreme Court justice named Howard Wynne. And at the opening of the book, Howard Wynne essentially falls into a coma. And then Avery is very surprised to learn that she has been made his legal guardian as opposed to his wife or son. And pretty much the story takes off from there. There's a very complicated mystery that Avery has to solve, and while she's trying to solve that, she sort of unveils this whole international conspiracy that Justice Wynne had stumbled upon prior to his falling into this coma, and so she's kind of caught up in all of that. So I did like the fact about this book that it was a very plotty and fast-paced thriller, very page-turning and I guess engaging in that regard. I also actually really liked the character of Justice Howard Wynne, who seemed to me to be modeled on the late Justice Antonin Scalia, and even though I didn't agree with Justice Scalia on many things at all, Howard Wynne as a character reminded me of Scalia because of his like angry grandpa vibe, but also because of the rhetorical flourish that he has whenever he speaks or writes anything. And that was definitely something that Justice Scalia had also. He was known for rhetorical flourishes in his judicial opinions, including things like jiggery pokery and pure applesauce, and yeah, just like things that made me laugh. So I actually quite enjoyed the character of Justice Wynne, even though we don't get to see a whole lot of him before he falls into his coma. I also felt like we didn't actually get to know all that much about Avery. I mean, we understand a lot about her life, but I felt like we didn't really get to know her too well as a character because we're sort of like seeing how all of the moving parts of this book unfold. And to me, there were too many characters to keep track of and too many balls in the air. And even though I did enjoy kind of seeing how everything ultimately came together, and, you know, kudos to Stacey Abrams for getting everything to pretty much come together, I just kind of felt like it was too much for one book. And honestly, most of the characters outside of Avery, her mother, and Justice Wynne were pretty interchangeable for me, and didn't really have very many distinguishing traits of their own, if any. But I would recommend it, especially if you like plotty thrillers, and especially if you care more about the plot than you do about the characters, because I am more of a character-driven reader. I think that's why I had a little bit harder time with this book, but I did still enjoy it overall, and again, I would recommend it if you like a page-turner and you're more of a plot-driven person. So 3.25 stars, and again, thank you so much to Sandy for sending this to me. So that's the only book I finished this week. So in terms of what I am currently reading, I am still making my way through the essential writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I have made some progress in this book. I had kind of stalled in my reading for a while, but I kind of like picked up the pace within this past week, so I'm hoping to continue in that vein, even though I'm not planning on finishing Emerson anytime soon. I'm also doing a buddy read of Emma for Jane Austen July with Kim at Middle of the Book March, Misa at Books and Sushi, and Antonisha at Ms. Moody Reader. And we've done our first check-in so far. We're at this point over a quarter of the way into the book. And I'm enjoying it so far. I like Emma as a character. I understand why some people find her irritating or a bit of a busybody, but I like her decidedly independent and I would say kind of like proto-feminist streak. I find that quite refreshing, and I think it's interesting that Jane Austen was able in the 19th century to create a character that I think in some ways speaks to 21st century values. So yeah, Jane Austen, ahead of her time. So I'm still enjoying that, and I'm curious to see where the story will go. I'm also currently doing a buddy read of The Edwardians by Vita Sackville-West with Margaret Menand. We have also done our first check-in on this. And we're going to do our next check-in on, what's today? Friday? Sunday. We're doing our second check-in on Sunday. So we need to pick this back up. And basically so far we've been introduced to the setting of Chevron, which is this like large palatial estate. And we've been introduced to the character of Sebastian, who is this basically like rich son of a, you know, landowning titled family. And there's a little bit of intrigue with Sebastian. It looks like possibly he has a potential love interest, and he's also just been approached by this explorer named Leonard Anquetil, who says basically, I'm going to take you away from this whole life that's all plotted out for you, and you should come with me and, you know, just sort of throw caution to the wind and live. So I guess we'll see what Sebastian ultimately decides to do. So this is going well so far too. And then the last book I'm currently reading is Louis Menand's The Free World, which I'm quite enjoying so far. I am now over 200 pages into this, and I'm still on schedule to finish it by the end of July at the pace that I'm going, which is about 25 to 30 pages a day. So the chapters in this seem, they're not completely self-contained, but I would say they're mostly self-contained. Even though sometimes you get reference to a previous figure in a later chapter, for the most part the chapters tend to center on a couple of figures, and that's pretty much it. So the first chapter was about George Kennan, who was part of the Truman administration, and the second chapter was on George Orwell. Then the third chapter was on Jean-Paul Sartre and existentialism. Then the fourth chapter was on Hannah Arendt, which I found quite fascinating. Then the next chapter was on Jackson Pollock, which I also found quite interesting. And then the chapter that I finished last was on, it was on Lionel Trilling, who I really like, and the Beat Poets, who had very interesting connections between them. So Lionel Trilling was a fairly well-known American literary critic, especially in the 1950s, and you wouldn't necessarily think he would be associated with the Beat Poets, but he was. So that was interesting. I hadn't known about that previously, especially the relationship between Allen Ginsberg and Lionel Trilling, because Lionel Trilling taught Allen Ginsberg, and apparently they were sort of friendly with one another, so that was interesting to read about too. So definitely still enjoying this, even though, again, it's going to take me most of the rest of the month to finish. So next up in my reading is probably going to be Y.A. Moore's The Dragons, the Giant, the Women, which I need to read for the BookTube Prize, and since we're already over a week into July, I feel like I should probably go ahead and read that, since I still have to read one more BookTube Prize book after that. So that's where my reading is at right now. So thank you for watching this. If you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear that. Please feel free to let me know that down in the comments below. I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, would it kill you to call you mother?